Hello and good afternoon to all of you. I hope all of you are doing well and all of you are in good health. In this class, we will discuss some of the important aspects related to research, and we'll also discuss the inherent steps that are involved in a research process. To begin with, let us try to understand research with the help of this famous quote, which says, research is complex and iterative. It is executed in order to unveil the truth, whether profound or mundane. It is like going through a blind alley to see if they are really blind. This quote related to research emphasizes on two important aspects. First, the very nature of research, and second, the importance of setting objectives in a research initiative. Let us now try to understand research in a greater detail. Definitely, research is a comprehensive process, a process that includes creation and assessment of all possible conditions, favorable or complementary. For an example, if we intend to develop drug for an ailment, it is important for us to first identify all possible conditions, favorable or complementary, and then assess the applicability or the suitability of the drug for the treatment of the ailment. Research includes establishing a relationship between variables. Categorically speaking, there are two types of variables, namely dependent variable and independent variable. In order to execute a praiseworthy research, it is important for us to first identify all the variables that are participating in a research initiative. Upon identifying the variables that are participating in the research initiative, we need to then categorize the identified variables into these two identified categories. Only then meaningful relationships may be established in between the dependent and the independent variables. Relationship may be established in between one dependent and one independent variable, or relationship may be established in between one dependent and many independent variables. Relationship that is established in between one dependent and one independent variable is called as single variable heuristic relation, whereas relationship established in between one dependent and many independent variables is referred to as multivariable heuristic relation. So, depending on the requirement of the research initiative, we may either pursue a single variable heuristic model or a multivariable heuristic model. Let us now try to understand the steps that are involved in a research process. In a sequential manner, a typical research process includes the following steps or phases: planning, confirming on research approach, data collection, research design, and eventually strategizing the entire research process. Now let us try to understand the set of activities that are performed in each of these identified steps or phases. The activities that are performed during planning phase are: number 1, identify all the research objectives or research questions. Number 2, identify the tasks that are to be executed pertaining to each and every research objectives or research questions. Number 3, identify the resource requirement of each and every identified tasks. Number 4, create a suitable schedule highlighting the tasks that will enable us in achieving the overall research objective. And fifth, confirm on the approach and design to be pursued for achieving the identified tasks. These are the 5 important activities that are performed during the planning phase. Now, in the second phase, the activity that is performed is confirming on the theoretical or the conceptual framework that will be relied on for achieving the overall research process or for achieving the set of activities that are highlighted during the planning phase. Once a theoretical or a conceptual basis has been decided upon, then we move on to the next phase that is called as the data collection phase. The activities that are performed during data collection phase are: number 1, identify all the relevant data items which are of significance to the research objectives. Number 2, identify all the data sources. Number 3, decide on the data collection mechanism to be adapted to. And number 4, prepare the data for analysis. Here, in this phase, depending on the availability and the organization of the available data, we may either pursue a completely structured approach or a semi-structured approach or a completely unstructured approach for collecting data. Structured approach refers to an approach where you have control over both the question as well as the answer. Semi-structured approach refers to an approach where you have control over the question but you do not have control over the answer. An unstructured approach refers to an approach where you have neither control over the question nor the answer. So depending on the availability of the data and the organization of the available data, you may either pursue structured or semi-structured or an unstructured approach. Once the data has been collected and prepared, we need to move on to the next phase where we try to organize the data in order to seek answer to the questions that were identified during the planning phase. So here we try to analyze the data to draw certain meaningful inferences that would be the potential answer to the research objectives that were highlighted during the planning phase. Now, depending on the requirement, it may be either situational, it may be either cross-sectional or longitudinal or experimental. So we may either pursue situational approach or cross-sectional approach or a longitudinal approach or experimental approach for designing our research initiative. And eventually, we have a phase dedicated for strategizing the entire research process, which refers to methodological practices that are to be adhered to for the attainment of the overall research objective. For an example, you have experiments being conducted, surveys being done, case study being executed in order to achieve the overall research objective. So, the 5 phases of a research process are planning, confirming on research approach, data collection, research design, and eventually strategizing the entire research process. Now, as a researcher, it is very much important for all of us to acquaint ourselves to the various aspects of research. Now, this diagram is a diagram that tries to explain or highlight all possible aspects that may be related to research. This is an onion diagram that tries to highlight the various aspects that one needs to know before initiating a research initiative. This onion diagram tries to highlight some of the important aspects that one needs to know. The first one being the research philosophy, followed by research approach, followed by methodological choices, followed by research strategy, followed by time horizon, and eventually data collection and analysis. Now, let us try to understand what each of this concept tries to address to. Research philosophy refers to a very nature of research, which implies how the sources of data will be identified, how the data will be collected, how the data will be analyzed, and eventually how inferences will be drawn from the analysis process. Now, research philosophy may be either based on positivism, it may be based on critical realism, it may be based on interpretivism, it may be based on postmodernism, it may be based on pragmatism. So, these are the 5 different types of research philosophies that may be pursued while initiating a research initiative or while pursuing a research initiative. Then comes the research approach. Now, research approach refers to what is the overall objective of the research initiative. It may be either to build a new theory, or it may be either to test existing theories, which implies it may be either inductive, or it may be either deductive, or it may be either abductive. So, depending on the requirement of the research initiative, we may pursue either inductive, deductive, or an abductive approach. So once the research philosophy and research approach is confirmed upon, then we move on to the methodological choices. Methodological choices refers to what kind of analysis we intend to do for achieving a said objective or for achieving a research objective. We may perform a qualitative analysis, or we may perform a quantitative analysis, or depending on the requirement, we may have a mixture of both qualitative as well as quantitative analysis. So, once the research philosophy is decided upon and research approach is looked upon, then we decide on what kind of methodological choices can be pursued. Then we move on to research strategy. Now, research strategy basically refers to what will be the strategic steps, or what will be the strategy that will be actually pursued for attaining the research objectives. It may be either experimental, it may be either based on survey, or it may be based on case study, it may be based on ethnography, it may be based on narration, it may be based on grounded theory, it may be based on action, or it may be based on archival research. So, depending on the requirement of the research initiative, we may decide on either of this research strategy. Then we move on to time horizon. Time horizon basically refers to the way how we will be acquiring data. It may be cross-sectional or it may be longitudinal, which implies we may investigate different data sources at same point in time, or we may investigate same data source at different point in time. So depending on our requirement, depending upon the requirement of a research initiative, we may pursue either a cross-sectional approach or we may pursue a longitudinal approach. Then eventually we move on to the analysis and the collection of data. So before initiating a research initiative or before initiating a research, we need to decide on this six important aspects: research philosophy, research approach, methodological choices, research strategy, time horizon, and the way how data collection and the analysis will be done. Only if proper selection of the methods are done for the achievement of the research initiative, we will eventually be able to execute a successful research process. Otherwise, it may be difficult for us to achieve whatever we are expecting to achieve. So, this is a diagram that is capable of representing all the important aspects that are related to research. So, it is important as a researcher for us to acquaint ourselves to each and every aspect of this particular diagram. You will see in the subsequent class, we'll discuss each of these aspects in a greater detail. So, till now, in today's class, we have learned about what is research, what should be the objectives of a research initiative. We have learned about what research includes, what are the variables that are participating in the research, and what are the types of relationship that may be established between the identified variables. Then we have learned about the various steps that are included in a research process. In a sequential manner, we have discussed each and every step, and we have discussed the activities that are involved in each and every step. And then we have moved into a Onion diagram that tries to represent each and every aspect of research, which includes research philosophy, research approach, methodological choices, research strategy, time horizon, and eventually data collection and analysis. In the subsequent class, we will learn about each and every aspect that is covered in this onion diagram. Thank you very much. Have a very good day.